All right, let's talk about this. Are the new schools in the Big Ten ready to enter this conference? Plus, is PJ Fleck creating a legacy with the Gophers today?
You are Locked On Golden Gophers, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Gopher fans? You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Off season's been a little bit wonky. We're trying to do 3 shows a week, but we are going to pick it up. Coming up in August, we're going to have 5 shows every week. We're going to break down every single Gophers opponent in depth. We're going to break down all of the position groups across the Minnesota Golden Gophers, but also ranking every position in the Big Ten. You're going to want to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of that Gophers goodness, because I need to know your thoughts. I need to know how you're feeling with each of these groups, how the Gophers sit in this conference, and then some. And speaking of this conference, today we're talking about the 4 new teams coming to the Big Ten. Are they going to be ready for Big Ten football? We're talking about that in depth a little bit today, and my thoughts on who might stand out, who might struggle, and what have you. Then we're going to talk about PJ Fleck, because is he creating a legacy with the Golden Gophers? Now, people might be like, whoa, slow your horses. And I'm not trying to jump the gun or anything like that. It's an interesting conversation that I'm hoping you'll have some thoughts on. And then finally, we're going to talk about that NCAA 25 game coming out. They dropped the top 100 players in the entire game, and the Gophers have someone on the list, and he's actually quite high. So we're going to dive into all of that today. Sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. Hit subscribe over on YouTube, and be sure to follow wherever you get your podcasts. Now, we're going to kick it off with the 4 new teams in the Big Ten. How do I think each of those 4 new teams are going to do in the Big Ten season in 2024? That's what we're going to dive into. So let's kick it off with each and every one of these teams and break it down a little bit by bit. Now, the first team we're going to kick off with is Oregon. And if you're asking me, I think Oregon is the only school in these 4 new teams coming in that will truly be ready from the jump, be ready to go, be ready to compete, be ready to potentially win the entire conference, which I would not be shocked if they came in and they won the whole darn thing. And that's high praise, because Ohio State has been dominant, and they look ready to dominate again with the roster they have this year. Michigan has been dominant over the last few years. Penn State always puts up a fight, but they haven't really been able to get it done. It's usually Ohio State and Michigan. I think Oregon is putting themselves right into that conversation from jump. Now, you're talking about an Oregon team that already could have the best quarterback in the entire Big Ten. And I truly think, don't get me wrong, love Bo Nix, had mad respect for Bo Nix, set the completion record for all of college football. You got to give props where props are due. I think Dillon Gabriel is a better quarterback than Bo Nix. I've been a big fan of Dillon Gabriel ever since he played at UCF. I thought the left-handed man was a baller. He balled out, and then the injury year, it kind of stunk. But then he goes to Oklahoma, and everybody's kind of trying to write him off in these different communities when it comes to like fantasy football in college and all these things. Everyone's like, oh, Dillon Gabriel, you can forget about him. Oh, he's overhyped. He's overrated. He's whatever. Dillon Gabriel balls out. Not 1, but 2 years. He wins the Red River rivalry last year with a Texas team that ends up going to the college football playoffs. But Oklahoma gets it done with Dillon Gabriel at the helm. Dillon Gabriel is a top quarterback in the country, plain and simple. He's going to be a Heisman candidate. I think he will be a Heisman finalist on this Oregon team, and I think that he could be set up better to complete even more yards, even more opportunities with this Oregon team than what we saw from Bo Nix. Now, on top of that, the wide receiver talent in that Oregon program is massively, I was going to say underrated, but they're definitely not underrated. They're one of the best in the country. Wide receiver talent out of this world. You got Tez Johnson, who had over 1,000 yards last year. He's back. You got Evan Stewart coming from Texas A&M. He could be one of the best receivers in the country. That's how talented he is. If he's put in the right situation, which he should be in Oregon, I think he can be put to his ceiling type of play, which could be an all-conference player in the Big Ten and beyond. And on top of that, you've got Jurian Dickey, who is a high-rated wide receiver in last year's freshman class. You've got Trayshawn Holden. You've got Casper. You've got Gary Bryant Jr. They've got so many wide receivers on this team that they're going to have riches galore. If somebody gets hurt, they will have a next man up. If they need to spread the ball out, there's weapons across the whole entire field. They've got Ferguson back at the tight end. He can get it done. They've got Herbert's brother back at the tight end. He can get it done. This Oregon team is going to be in the conversation, plain and simple. The offensive line is steady. I do question how consistent the ground game will be. They've got Jordan James, they've got Whittington back, but those two can be sufficeable. But I think they're not quite to the level that we saw of Bucky Irving, who was a difference maker. He was a change maker, and that could be the Gopher bias in me with the former Gophers player as a true freshman. But I think that will be a big difference in their game, which means Dylan Gabriel might pass the ball more. Also, Dylan Gabriel can get the thing done on the ground as well. He had a decent amount of rushing yards with Oklahoma, so I think overall they'll be okay in that department. The defense is the real deal. They've got Uangalele's brother over there as a defensive end, and Dan Lanning's special sauce. His specialty is the defense. He'll always have his team right. So I think Oregon is the only team that can truly challenge Ohio State this year. Maybe Penn State could push them, but I think it's going to come down to Oregon and Ohio State. So Oregon is definitely ready. Now, moving on to some of the other teams, we've got Washington, we've got USC. I think both of those schools are in a very similar category when it comes to the transition to the Big Ten. Similar territories for me. I think they can hold their own. I think they can find some success, maybe make a bowl game. I think USC will make a bowl game. Washington might be on the cusp in year one, but I do think that they will have a wake-up call, and they won't be pushing for the playoffs. They won't be some dominant transitional team. I think it's going to take them time. Now, on the USC side, I think that they have major defensive questions. We saw that last year. They were one of the worst defenses in the country last year. They fired their defense coordinator, brought somebody new in, but I don't think it's just going to be a magical fix with that new defensive coordinator. I think that they could still have their struggles, but also how good is Miller Moss really? I mean, we've seen him play in a bowl game, 6 touchdowns. You can't snuff at that or anything, but is he a consistent baller? Is he a consistent starter? Is he one of the best in the Big Ten? I'm not convinced on that quite yet. Now, we have a 1-game sample size of someone who has been relegated to the bench over the past 3 years with Jackson Dart and Caleb Williams playing in front of him. Now, props to him for waiting it out and grinding it out and knowing that his time could come with Lincoln Riley. Major props to him. I'm not going to downplay that whatsoever, but is he the guy rather than a guy? That's a big question for me. And then you flip it over to Washington. I thought Washington would actually transfer very nicely to the Big Ten. Could have been in the conversation like in Oregon, but they lost a ton of players to the NFL. And then Kalen DeBoer, who I have major credit to. He is a fantastic coach at every school he has been to. I thought he would have been fine in the Big Ten. He would have found a way to get it done. He had Will Rogers coming in. I thought, you know what? They're going to find a way. They're going to be a competitive team. They're going to make it happen. He goes to Alabama, and all of a sudden, everything kind of goes up in the air. They still kept Will Rogers, but Jedd Fisch takes over the program. And I think Jedd Fisch showed in Arizona last year that he can build something. He brought them to a 10-win season last year. But that being said, you can't ignore what he did prior to that. 1-11 in his first year at Arizona, 5-7 in his second year. Now, he saw progress from those 2 years, but the truth is his coaching outlook or upside is probably closer to a PJ Fleck level, or possibly even lower than PJ Fleck than people care to admit. So overall, I think Washington can be getting a little bit too much hype and bias because they were just in that national championship game, but this is not that national championship team. So it will definitely take them a beat to get adjusted and get to an elite level if they are to get there. Though I am going to tell you right now, Adam Muhammad, that's my guy. That's my dog. True freshman running back for Washington. He might play some snaps this year, but let me tell you right now, I'm going to say it maybe way in advance. He is going to be a demon as a running back. He is going to be a dog. He is going to be an all Big Ten running back at some point in his career. I have that strong of feelings towards Adam Muhammad. So hopefully mad love and respect for him. Future is bright. And then finally, you've got UCLA. Now, if you've listened to this show before, you know I am not a believer in UCLA's transition. Bieniemy is coming over as the offensive coordinator. That's nice. But I don't think that they have the personnel right now to find success in year one. On top of that, they don't have a head coach who has been a head coach, and I think he could be in over his heads in this conference change. On top of that, UCLA, in my opinion, is going to be a bottom 3 team in the Big Ten in 2024. And if they aren't, I will come here on this very show and I will apologize personally to all the UCLA fans out there, but I do not see a path for success for them. Furthermore, Ethan Garbers is not him for me. I don't think he is a top 10 quarterback in the Big Ten. I don't think that he is someone to be afraid of, and I will believe it when I see it, but I haven't seen it, and I don't think I will. So call me a hater, but UCLA is going to feel the transition pains the most of these 4 schools, in my opinion. Now, just remember, Nebraska came over and they were the kings prior to joining the Big Ten. And people said they were going to run through the Big Ten, especially in the West, and they were going to dominate. And we all saw that that was absolutely not the case. And I say that as someone who actually kind of likes Nebraska. I got respect for the passion that their fans bring. I like Matt Rule. I love Tony White, their defensive coordinator. They'll be much better this year, and I think they're ready to go bowling. But I just want to kind of don't throw caution to the wind. Know that these transitions are going to be just that, a transition. They're not going to be able to just dominate right away, besides maybe Oregon. So I want to know, do you agree or disagree with me on the newbies? Drop them in the comments below over on YouTube. But next up, we're going to talk about PJ Fleck. Is he building a legacy with Minnesota? We're diving into that coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel, because I love sports and I love them so much that I do not want them to stop. And luckily for us, they're still going. You got the WNBA, you got the MLB, and heck, over at FanDuel, you can even start betting on summer league games. USA basketball will be in tow. The Olympics will be going. But as the playoffs have winded down, sports aren't sportsing quite like they were. But that doesn't mean you can't get in on the action. FanDuel lets you keep going whenever you want, and all you have to do is open the app and dream up the bets when you are in the mood. Now, this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all of their customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and of Locked On. And when I head over to FanDuel right now, I'm taking a look at Angel Reese, who has her own category in the WNBA. Now, I'm a big Angel Reese fan. I respect what she does. She might not be a 20-point scorer or anything like that, but she does her role to its finest. I think she is a young player who has the potential to play like an Asia Wilson in maybe 5-8 years from now. But I think right now in her rookie season, she is dominating, especially as a double-double machine and cleaning up on the glass. You look and you can bet on her odds to record a double-double in consecutive games from June 4th. Now she's got, I believe, 14 straight going right now. So you can bet and make it 15 plus, 16 plus, 17 plus, 18 plus, and the odds are over at FanDuel. I think she's going to make it to at least 16. So I would take those odds. But like I said, head on over to FanDuel.com and take advantage of their daily bonus each and every day this summer and dream up big over at FanDuel.com. All right, Gophers fans, let's talk about PJ Fleck. Is he building a legacy with Minnesota? Now, what do I mean by that? I mean something that we can look back on once his tenure is up, once he has decided either he's moving on, the program decides they're moving on, or whenever he retires, what have you. When that day comes, will we look back and be like, man, we took for granted what coach had built and what had been sustained here in Minnesota, or will it be a time where we're like, we didn't get off soon enough? Now, I am one who thinks it's more of the former. I think that we're going to look back and maybe we didn't appreciate what we had with Coach Fleck as much as we should have as a unified fan base. I think that there are many that love Coach Fleck, maybe too much at points. And I think there are a ton that absolutely hate Coach Fleck, and it might be more because of his personality or because they see him as a salesman, but he just brings a different energy, an energy that a lot of college players like. And a lot of people want to point to, oh, well, he makes college players do this, or he pulls their scholarships, or blah, blah, blah. Bro, you are just speaking on rumors, not facts. When you get out there and you talk to the different players, the different family members, the different prospects and what have you, 95% of them have been like, No, he plays it by the book. We really appreciated the process. We found out he either was for us or wasn't for us as far as like what his energy and his personality and whatnot is, and if that fits with my vibe. But at the same time, most players, most coaches, most parents, most prospects, most commits have all been like, I love it. And he's kept it a buck, and it's been for real. And then you've got maybe the tiny majority that has been like, oh, well, this happened, or oh, he made us say these slangs or these different acronyms or thing like that. And if it's like, bro, there's acronyms everywhere in college sports. I remember the article that dropped like a year ago or so that was just absolutely torn apart by people who've played for this program, saying it was a bunch of hooey and that the culture being called toxic is absolutely ridiculous. But it's somebody who's like, he made us say, family, forget about me, I love you. And he wanted us to forget about ourselves. Like, bro, we use that phrase at D2 level where I was a video coordinator. Alabama has used that forget about me, I love you phrase. Jalen Milroe has talked about it in multiple interviews over the last year. There are many programs in the entire country that have talked about using acronyms like that. So people wanting to call that negative or toxic is absolutely dumbfounded. But when you're looking at what Coach Fleck has done, he has a 50-34 record with Minnesota. Many wrote him off as someone who would be on in and out. He would be a guy who is out the door as soon as he can to the next big job. And although there have constantly been rumors, he keeps extending and he keeps saying he loves it here and he likes where he is living and he loves his situation and all these things. He's saying the right things and he's invested in the community and he's had his team giving, and he's had his team volunteering and all these things. And on top of that, he has a great culture where off the field drama and problems have been non-existent for this Gophers team. He has coaches here who have been promoted to other positions, who have taken other opportunities to help them continue to grow. And he also continues to find other good young coaches. Coach Winston De La Tiberiere is an exemplary example of that, because he is just what you are looking for in a young coach who has the drive, who has the upside, who has the desire. And he also has the recruiting chops and the personality and the personableness. So overall, he's finding ways to get it done from across every facet of college sports at the most difficult crux of college sports, where you have an NIL, where you have the transfer era, where you have all these things going crazy. And Minnesota seems to be fairly stable, keeping Darius Taylor, keeping Daniel Jackson, keeping Aireontae Ersery, all these guys who could go to the NFL, who could maybe play at a bigger school and maybe get more eyes on them, but they're ready to lock in and be a part of the culture and keep on growing. On top of that, pro development has been at an all-time high for the Gophers over the last few years. They've won the rivalry trophies back, and they have also made those games truly feel like rivalries and a real rivalry that can go either way. They have had bowl success regardless of the caliber, even if it hasn't been the high bowl games at all times. They have played in a couple high bowl games and got dubs in those high bowl games, but they're winning bowl games. On top of that, he has had the winningest season in Minnesota Gophers history, basically, since the national championship years, which were very, very long ago. So yes, you would love to see some more upsets. Yes, you would love to see always taking care of business in the favored games. Yes, we didn't want to see Bowling Green happen 2 years ago, but they have exercised that demon in the bowl game this last year. You would love to see them have more dominant wins. Yes. And on top of that, you want to win both rivalry games in the same season. But if he is truly in it for the long haul, and if Minnesota can figure out the NIL waters, especially with some of the giant corporate companies here in Minnesota, the Fortune 500s and whatnot, well, I really do think PJ Fleck could be a coach that people look back on and say, maybe we didn't appreciate his tenure enough when we were in the thick of it. What are your thoughts there? Let me know in the comments below. I am very curious to see how Gophers fans receive that one. But overall, I think when we look back on the time of Coach Fleck, especially if they trend back upwards towards more 8-win seasons, if they can get into a college football playoff in one of his years, it's going to be a time where you're going to be like, man, maybe we shouldn't have been as negative. Maybe we shouldn't have been as down in the dumps. Now, has he brought a Big Ten championship to Minnesota? No. But it has been better than it has been for decades, and you have to take appreciation in that. So that's what I think with Coach Fleck. I'm curious on your thoughts below, but the final thing we're going to talk about is the Gophers in the latest NCAA 25 game. The Gophers have a top 100 player, and he is rated fairly high. We're going to jump into that and what I think other Gophers could be rated, who could be their other best players. We're jumping into that coming up next. All right, Gophers fans, the highly anticipated NCAA 25 game is coming out for the first time in a decade. Fans are just ravenous waiting for this game to come out, and it will be here in less than 10 days. And they dropped their top 100 ranked players in the game, and Aireontae Ersery is a top 25 player in the video game. And how could the other Gophers fare? We're going to jump and talk about that a little bit in today's show. But Aireontae came in at a 93 overall, 24th highest in the game. He's a top 3 tackle, a top 4 offensive lineman, and the strongest offensive lineman of those in the top 4. Now, he has a 66 speed, which is not bad. He has a 75 acceleration, which should be really nice, especially with a quick get off of the line of scrimmage. And then he's got a 97 strength, which, look, bruh is a beast. And then he's got a 95 awareness. So he's headstrong. He'll prevent sacks, and he will stay away from the penalties. He is going to be everything you want in an offensive lineman on a video game and in real life. Now, I love the respect that Minnesota is getting, or at least that Aireontae Ersery is getting on that front from the game, because they definitely could have rated him lower just because of the helmet that he wears. But it gives me hope that Minnesota will get some respect on this game. Now, based on the Dynasty Mode trailer that dropped, Minnesota was rated an 81 overall, and to be honest, I'll take it. Now, their 2 rivals were ahead of them in Wisconsin and Iowa, both of them being listed in the top 25 teams on the game, but both of them being listed at an 83. So it's not like their level's better than Minnesota on this game. And Minnesota is coming off their worst record since year 1 with Coach Fleck, but it shows that they didn't just go off of last year's results solely when determining this next year's game's rankings. Now, overall, it showed Minnesota as an 81 overall, 81 offense, 82 defense. And this tells me some defenders will have some real love on this game, because if you think about it and you have a top 25 player on the offense, but your defense is rated higher, that means you probably have some more higher rated defensive players, maybe not in the 90s quite so, but a lot of higher 80s, mid 80s that can help boost that rating overall. So I expect good ratings for Jaw Joyner, Justin Wally, Cody Lindenberg. I think all 3 will be rated above an 85 or more. Now, I think these ratings also say that outside of Aireontae Ersery and a handful of others, the offensive players could be rather lower on their averages across the board. I imagine Darius Taylor, Daniel Jackson, Tyler Cooper, and Quinn Carroll will all have solid ratings, probably above an 80, but definitely below a 90. So after a reevaluation, because we gave our thoughts on this in the earlier show months ago on what the ratings could be, and we projected it right, that Aireontae Ersery would be the number 1 player and that he could be maybe at a 90. I think I had him at 80, 89 or 90. Love to see him at a 93. But after reevaluating, I think Daniel Jackson comes in at an 87, Quinn Carroll at an 83, Darius Taylor at an 82, and Tyler Cooper at an 81. Now, Max Brosmer is the one that I am very curious to see where they place him in this game. I could see anywhere between 78 and 80, but personally, with the production he brings from the FCS and what have you, I would say an 84. We'll see what respect he gets. But defensively, I would guess Jaw Joyner comes in at 87, Justin Wally at 86, Cody Lindenberg at 85, and finally, I believe the second highest rated player for the Gophers will be kicker Dragan Kesic at an 88. Now, we're going to revisit these once the game drops, but it's almost here, and I hope y'all are as excited as me to play as your favorite Golden Gophers in the maroon and gold. Let me know your thoughts on the game. Let me know your thoughts on Fleck. Let me know your thoughts on the new schools joining the Big Ten, but I enjoyed this episode a lot. I hope you do too. Be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube so you don't miss any of the daily Gophers content we have going for you, especially as we get back into the full swing of things in August. Until next time, I will see you here at Locked On Golden Gophers. This is Kane Rob signing off. Follow, row the boat, Sky. Don't forget to hit subscribe.